recital hall. Because this afternoon I'm going to play a little bit, at least I'm going to talk and stop whenever it gets hard. I'm going to play a little bit of Vivaldi E minor for you guys, and talk about some tonguing and articulation things, try to apply some of the stuff I talked about, showing you how I can't apply what I say, you know. And so we'll go through that. And I think, first of all, on the agenda this afternoon, what I'd like to do is kind of talk through, almost literally note by note, this Tchaikovsky 4 thing, to see what problems there are in that. If there is, did everybody get a copy of this now? Because there are more copies. We have a whole bunch of copies made here. Here's this. Anybody else need a? Anybody over there? Pass these. Okay, here we go. And can we pass these over there? Thank you. Okay. That's right. Okay, we covered that the first question of the C sharp right now. I was talking to people a little bit afterwards, and the reason some people might like to use that short D flat there, and in the old days I might have thought this was, you know, kind of heretical to think about using a short D flat there, but some people do it. Dennis Michael uses it in the Chicago Symphony when he plays it. A lot of people use the short C sharp because they don't like the penetrating, too bright sound that C sharp can get with a full fingering. And another argument is that some people like to start that first note with a little bit of a breath attack, because I think this is something, you know, they sort of, again, overlapping some of my topics. I think that all of us suffer in some sense from our band training, because we were taught there are two articulations, tongued and slurred, basically, you know. I mean, you want it tongued or you want it slurred. And I think that all the variations in between are really important for us to be aware of and to cultivate. All the way from breath attacks to da 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 kind of tonguing it to tut 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 to really short, sharp kind of tonguing. So that I think depending on how you want to sneak in on that first note, what intonation tendencies you have and if overcome or not, are all going to determine how you start on that first D flat. So, you know, that's first thing, so we can talk forever on every note on this. And then you have to decide, well, am I going to flick the C as I go through that? Am I going to flick the B flat? Am I going to flick the A? My answer on all those is, it used to be more definite. Yeah, of course you flick it, but there's one variation on flicking that because some players used it very successfully. In fact, I learned a few years ago, John Miller was telling me that flicking was a new thing to him because he used to always do a little bit of a half hole on notes if he knew that he was going to have trouble with them. And I tell you, sometimes in soft passages, if you have to really attack a note and you know that you have the choice between you know, wrestling with a flick key and compensating for the little strange intonation things that might happen, and sneaking into it with a breath attack with a half hole, can be an option to that. So I'm a you know, polytheist these days as far as flick keys go and these different fingerings, because I think whatever works for you, whatever comes out, as long as you're checking yourself by recording yourself or having friends that are honest, talk to you, you know, because you have to have friends, you know, that aren't going to be just totally supportive of everything you do. People that have to, it's not a spouse or it's not, you know, it's, for me, I use people, well, I have a spouse that is across the orchestra with me, a violinist, but she's always been very frank with me. I can ask her, say, listen here and tell me whether I come in high or whether you like the attack or whatever, and she'll tell me, and I try to cultivate that kind of friendship in the orchestra. And whatever orchestra you play in, try to cultivate those people, get to know those people that hold those primitive string instruments, and, you know, get them to be your colleagues in that, and be sure to, you know, they'll be shocked when you ask them, you know, because, and it doesn't have to be the best player in the orchestra either. I think that's sort of a fallacy too. Sometimes, you know, the person that's least adept on his or her instrument can have a great ear, but it could be they only get to practice an hour a month, or they just aren't, you know, into the instrument that much, but they can hear really well. So find those people and get that kind of feedback. Don't think you have to only be criticized by Itzhak Perlman. You can be criticized by, you know, the worst violinist in your orchestra, you know, that works 80 hours a week, teaching school or something. So, take it for its content and not from whom it's proceeding. So anyway, so you have your choices on all first three notes. You have choices to make. On the A, I would say I would probably go for the flick key on the A. And it would carry, because it's already down, it would carry over to the B flat on that note. And then on the F, don't forget you have the option of using the A flat key for the slur up. You also have the option of using now I'm doubting myself. You have the option of using the C sharp key on your left thumb to help that F come out also. So you have those two options on the F. Or you can, and if you don't use either of those options, be cognizant of the fact that the F may be a little low. The F, some people have told me that they think that somebody, I can't remember who it was, that had measured pressure on all the different notes on the bassoon by putting a gauge in the corner of his mouth, told me that the F required the most air pressure of any note, that F. It has the most resistance. I believe it. I mean, it sure feels like it sometimes, that you really have to kind of get that F, get a lot behind that F. So it tends to be, maybe not as high as you'd like it to be sometimes. And then when you slur, you're going to reattack the F, and then at that point you say, well, is my A flat key still going to be down? Is it going to be a regular F, or what's it going to be there? So you have questions on the first, 7 notes now, and then you go to the C, and to slur down to the C, don't forget that the part of the, see, I'm applying everything from this morning. You can use the D key to flick down to the C. It's much easier and much more sure than using the C key on the down slur to C. Right? And then you have your choice on the E flat. You have to decide whether you're going to use 1, 2, 2, 3, or whether you're going to have the first finger. If you're going to use 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 on the E flat. So you have those choices. Again, you have the choice on the C flat. Okay, now we've covered all the notes now, except until we get down to the open F. And there are even ways. People might even have doubts on what to use for the open F, right? Some people might want to put down the, some people would use the low D key maybe. Some people might use pancake key depending on their bassoon. Some people might use low F key. Some people might use low F key with the low, what is that? Low C sharp key? Is that one? Is that an option for some people? That's in the dark dredges of my mind. So there are all sorts of things to use on that open F that you can experiment with. Just be sure you listen to what that note is, and then from then on everything's basically covered. You can make the you can't let Lauren be around when you're trying whatever G you want to try. So you try the G, and you're pretty set from there on. But what I would like to do is get one so we can hear the resonances of all these things, is to practice this thing against a B flat drone, and it would be kind of useful just to have one, have a couple people do it, and then we can try that. We can, well, what do we do? Mask one first, so you remember all. So it's imprinted what all those things were, maybe you'll remember. Since we just talked about all those notes, let's just go slowly. So let's do the first 3 notes. Remember what those are. That you choose the C sharp, or you choose the D flat finger. You choose whether you're going to flick those 3 notes. Okay, so let's play the first 3 notes. Da, da, da. Okay, now the next 3 notes you're going to decide whether you're going to use the flick key, holding down the flick key on the A, B flat, and then going to the F key, or the G sharp key for the F. Let's try those 3 notes. Once more those 3 notes. How about everybody once try your A, everybody hold down the A flick key just to see what it's like, whether you do that or not. So see what it sounds like all together. At A. Did everybody remember the G sharp key we're supposed to remember? from the F down to the C, try doing it with flicking the D key. So F, C, F, take off, make sure your thumb is free so you can hit the high D key. You have a high D key on your instrument? Yeah, so hit the D key right as you can see. Good, beautiful. Just a couple. Good, beautiful. That works. Good. Okay, you guys. Let's have a sample over here. Can you hear F to C? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Were you using the D key on that? Do you use the D key? I did. Good. Sounds good. Sounds really good. I mean, I'm saying the slur was good. If you didn't use it, I was impressed. Yeah, that's very good. How about one back there? Yeah, good. That's good. I mean, it's really easy with that. You can be guaranteed that note's going to come.
Are you saying to flick the D key or hold it down?
Flick it. Okay. I think if you hold it down, it'll distort it too much. Okay. I think, yeah. So that's pretty good. Okay, now what other problems come up in this? That really covers all the problems of this until you get to the open F, right? Now let me play the B flat, and then let's just hear a couple. Let's hear when I point at you, give me an F that goes with that's a fourth down from this. Piece too, it's nice to drum that B flat, so you hear that B flat minor, and you get that F, the fifth, so you really, get that block thing, and then you go into the question of where does the D flat go? I mean, we all have these ideas of pitch. I don't know how, I had to leave in the middle last night to go practice with Lauren's thing, but did he talk about explicitly about major and minor thirds at all last night? Because that's one thing that, I mean, there's sort of we're so used to playing with piano all the time, and used to hearing, we're better down here. And to me, sometimes that the minor third is a little too close on piano, and the major thirds are a little bit too far away. So it almost helps in this key. The bassoon works with us. Since the D flat is naturally a little high, it probably works well in this. And I think when the thing that strikes me with this excerpt is the first note that you really hear, if it's out of tune, is going to be the B flat, because it's going to be not quite distant enough from the B flat, because it's not quite distant enough from the D flat. I don't know, but that's something to think about in Mull, because it's hard to sort it out in this group. But let's can we just try it? Can we do a sample? We stopped over. Would you try just the first three notes and then land on our first four notes and just go down to I'm going to drone the B flat, and then see, and you can do it slowly and mess with it, do it a couple times, and see if you can find the sweet spot for those notes that'll make you feel like you're in B flat minor. about stretching that interval too, I think, sometimes I think people will say, well, leading tone should be leading to it. Well, sometimes I think you can lead to something by kind of springing back on that seventh, and then so you feel the pressure to go to resolve to the B flat rather than pushing there and then allowing it to get to the B flat. That's how I sort of see that image, and I think the same thing with the minor third. It's trying to go to this, it's trying to move into sort of a blockier minor third, but you're kind of stretching it away from it. You're sort of pulling it away so it sprongs back. And the major third, you have to kind of compress, and so it springs out to a major third, which gives it the kind of major feeling. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I sort of feel that minor goes like this and major, goes like that. But it's just my again, another delusion. But let's try. How about and another method for getting the sound of this right would be to go. I want to ask, I want to give a lot of people a chance to play that album. But would you mind just starting on the B flat against the drone, starting on the B flat and just playing the first three notes, playing those first three notes backwards. So go B flat, C, D flat. And here's a good way to establish what your D flat should be. So if you have that, and you're practicing, and Sasha's probably found that, or these people that are practicing for auditions, that you're practicing stuff over and over and over again, pretty soon you become kind of numb to it, so it's good to have that. And another solution to this is to practice, is to bring everything up a half step and do it a drone against B natural or something, do it in B minor, and so then you say, oh yeah, okay, now why does this sound better? Well, it's because I'm playing it better in tune. So now I go back to the original key, because now I'm not worried about the F, the G sharp key for the F. What are all those stupid things I'm supposed to be doing, And you do it in another context, and your ears are kind of cleaned down a little bit. So I mean, it's just another approach to this. So let's do. I'd love for it. Does somebody want to take a stab at playing the whole thing? Do we have a volunteer? You want to try? Okay, good man here. Okay, would you mind doing it with a drone once or not? Because it's far away from you. You can ignore it. I'll turn it down a little bit, so we just hear that B flat. And I think you maybe felt a little rushed going into the second part, right? And you could let that resonate for a minute and then go on. You could take the time. The orchestra will wait for you there. And one thing to remember about this solo is in the second half, the strings really start to move and they're digging in a little bit. So you really, forget about pianissimo at that point. Where it says espressivo on your part, think mezzo forte. I mean, think. You really have to build it up because otherwise it gets really crunched in that register a whole lot. And if you do that too, then it makes this little pianissimo thing you have at the end not have to be, sort of raises the stakes a little bit too, so the pianissimo doesn't have to be quite that bad, especially when you're playing it alone in an audition. So play the second half of the solo up a little bit, so that when they're asking you, yes, and play the end too, you can sound like a genius because you're playing a much lower dynamic level. And then let's see who can. We have a volunteer to play the last 5 measures solo, so that against the B flat, so you can hear how well you do with that 5th at the end. Okay, great. Thank you. you start on the F, get the F feeling good, come down to the B flat, dip down to the E natural, and then rest on the B flat to make sure you like the scale. And then you include the E flat, so it's a F, E flat. You know, just do the scale down. And then the natural, and then go up, it's like go up and down the scale twice, just like that. Go down once more. Just go down once more, and then we'll do a whistle. Your B flat's crept up a little bit, so make sure the B flat. I think that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Okay, now do the solo. B flat, B flat. Let me hear that interval against this. Bum, 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 bum. Good. Oh, you want to go here? I'll try to. There you go. Good. Right. Again, D flat. Maybe it's a little high. For subjectivity here, right? So you get to see where it feels more comfortable. If you get that feeling of B flat minor, it'll be much more of a statement of how you want the thing to hear, how you want it to sound. So never think of the bassoon as sort of a keyboard instrument where you're pushing things, you know, because every key is you should have a different sound in your ear. And then that's one thing, you know, going back to the scales for a second. One interesting thing you might mess with is when you do your scales is to see if you can really hear where the thirds are, where the third note of the scale is, and where the seventh is, and see if you would be able to, if it's almost as if you could identify the scale by if someone told you, played those two notes for you, those pair of slightly lower notes in a major scale, and say, oh yes, that's got to be C major because I hear low, you picked out a low E and a low B, so that must be C major. So it'll really open your ears to see if you can hear that. It's a little hard to do if you're playing the scales too fast, but you might, because you probably have that experience, you're playing a bunch of scales and say, oh, this one doesn't sound right, you know. I mean, and it's really interesting if you try to do them chromatically. I mean, you play A major, and then you play B flat major, and then you play B major. The function of those notes changes as you go up, so you have to kind of keep track of where you are. If you know what I mean. So if you play A major first and then you play B flat major, the A is probably too high for the B flat you're gonna pick. I think. I mean that's how I hear the scales in that thing. You know, I kind of hear when I hear a scale, I hear the key that's going to be easy to play the 5 chord in, and you want the G and the E, the G and the B to be a slightly scrunched interval, I think, for the 5. This is my logic anyway. And so you're going to want that tendency to be there on the 7th note anyway. So anyway, that gets a little abstruse, but I think it really helped your intonation to at least realize that's what happens sometimes. And especially playing in tune in a bassoon section, if you're playing either first or second bassoon, and you look and you're playing stuff in thirds, take the trouble to look and see which are the major. I mean, for me, I don't get it in passing all the time. I try to do it instinctively, but it helps me a lot if I go through and identify what the major and minor intervals are, and so that I can correct them. So when it's quick and dirty, we can sound like we're pretty in tune, just by the tendencies. Because if you're there trying to really nail it with a tuner, sometimes it's pretty crazy. I mean, I did this thing. I won't do it today, but because I want to get some more stuff done. But I shocked a class last month because I brought in this, and I said, okay, I brought up one victim, and I had her. I said I droned an F, and I said, okay, play your A in tune with the tuner, and she played it, and then I said, now move it down to that lower triangle. On my tuner anyway, you have those little triangles that show you where the thirds are, and if you brought it down to the left, it just rang, and everyone in the room went, whoa! It was pretty astounding how much that brought it in tune. But you can mess with that if you can get, do it with a drone. It's dramatic. And we did the same thing with the minor third, pushing up the A flat, and people were astounded. I think it really got people thinking about it. So it's more of an astounding effect than you might believe right now. But and maybe a lot of us just do it instinctively and by ear, and you're not thinking about it. But it's sort of fun, especially when you're having problems with something, to be able to strictly, to analytically identify where the problem is. But anyway, this is. What should we do with this? Could we give one more person a chance to play through? Would anybody else that's not going to get to perform much this week like to try once through this solo, just without a drum? No drum, and it'll be open to people. Just to a couple comments. We need it. Come on, can't you? What do you guys do? Okay, what do you guys do it back there? Who? Any volunteers?
I can do it.
Can you? Okay. All right. Thank you. A brave person. If you could improve one note, what do you think it would be? What note would you tell her? Do you hear one note that bugs you a little bit or not?
B flat.
B flat.
B flat, yeah.
B
I
flat.
think B
Yeah,
flat was a
that
little
last
high.
one was too sharp, I thought.
Too sharp, and the one that gets me sometimes is your A natural too. Dee da, where that A sounds a little high to me, but that's something there, but that's good. Yes, back in the question in the back?
Yeah, when you recommend drone work to your students, do you usually tell them to just use tonic, or do you ever have other?
I do that. I urge them to be whatever will keep them interested. I think it's good for tonic, and if it changes, and if you have more knowledge of music theory than I do. Since I was a math major, I didn't get Shake theory, and I just sort of learned it piecemeal. I always run over to people. What chord? That was so cool. What chord was that? And then people ask me, well, it's a and they tell me, I forget it, but they tell me what it is, and then I'm amazed, and then I forget it. But but it's cool. I mean, I like doing it. I feel like I'm really naive. Who's this guy, Mozart?
Oh, he's dead now.
Forget about it. Yeah. But I think it's good to be creative, because you might want to have something. I mean, something else may be coming up in the piece. You want to be anticipating that, and you want to work towards that. And it's just great. I mean, we talk about bolero a little bit later too, and that's sort of up in the air what you want to drone on that. I mean, you want to drone with F or B flat, or what do you want to do on that? So it's interesting ways. It just any rocks you can turn over and see what are under them. I think any lever you use for them is good.
Question.
Yes.
Before we leave this movement starts with this exact same tune, an octave up in the oboe.
Yeah, it's a little longer of a tune too. I think. Yeah, a little different. Yeah.
Do you ever get together with the oboe player and say, let's do it this way?
I have, I at least I listen to them in rehearsal night, and I try not to do something that's kind of radically against that, But it's nice that you have, a warm up that you get to do with the violas halfway through. You have a short version of the solo halfway through before the, which is a lot of fun. And that gives me more. But I do imagine what the oboe's phrasing was. And one last thing on this is tempo. Because I found people tend to play a little too slow in auditions. And I think the way that I try to get the tempo is to think of that faster middle section, that dee da dum bum ba da dum bum ba, and that's an easier tempo to think of, I think. And that marking on that is più mosso. It's just like faster, but I don't think it's that much faster. So so because they're bum, 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 is how I feel the solo, sort of the underlying rhythm of the solo is the pizzicato is going on, so that you have to feel, it can't be bum, 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 bum. That's, I mean, it's obviously too slow, but people still dee da da dee da da. That's I think it's too slow if you look at the skeleton of it. So anyway, that's just a good way to find that sweet spot where the tempo is too. So if you're under the spotlight and you're trying to audition and you're not playing with the orchestra doesn't set it up for you. Just think that dee da dum dum dee da dum bum, then it'll give you a much lighter moving forward tempo, I think, than you would get just trying to get it out of thin air. I mean, because that's deadly. I don't want to do too fast. I don't want to do slow. And you feel too boxed in. So, I mean, that's my. Unless there are any other questions on that, that's my total wisdom for sure on that. You go ahead. Another question.
Just one. Do you personally use the same B flat throughout, or do you switch to more?
I do. I use currently. In the times I've done it, I've always used the full D flat. And I try to come in with a little bit of come in with more of a breath accent in the beginning too. Yes.
Can you tell us what you usually do for the marimba at the end?
I've used.
Shade it or do?
I usually think I get my courage. I don't usually add anything to it because what I do is I count the way I do long tones. I do kind of a long tones with a metronome and count forward and backward as I do crescendi, decrescendi. And so on this thing, I just know that I'm gonna count backwards from 5 to 0. So I dee da da dee da dee 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So it gives me courage. I don't think I'm holding the F. I think motion's a good thing, rather than the deer in the headlights idea, I'm as susceptible to that as anybody else, and I have to remind myself, I have to give myself pep talks before I play. Remember to keep putting air into the instrument and move your fingers. Don't slide them off the keys. Move the fingers. Breathe. Keep the reed on the instrument. And I mean, I tell myself very basic things. Relax. Don't sit there holding your breath before a hard solo. So I mean, it's good to put yourself in that situation. Also, it's good to subject yourself in. Another footnote. When you're practicing, I think it's good, especially if you're practicing for an audition or for a performance, to try to put yourself in kind of an agitated state. I mean, see what it's like. First of all, maybe pick up the instrument cold and try to play it. Convince yourself that you can just pick up the instrument, select the reed, play the solo right away. My wife was telling me that at Meadowmount, the big violin camp, that way up there in the Northeast, that she, one of her roommates one year was going to play the Brahms concerto with an orchestra, and she got up every morning before she warmed up and just played through the Brahms concerto, because she figured if she could do it like that, from memory and everything, that she could do it with, that would be the worst it would be. So she tried to do that, dive right into the cold water. So that, it's good. I think relaxation is good. I advocate it. You have to look at relaxation techniques, but it's good to kind of try to, simulate agitation too, and see how you do. And then you try to relax yourself from there. Extra coffee might do it. I don't know. It does for me. I'm definitely a coffee addict, so that helps me with that kind of simulation. But anyway, just try to put yourself into that imaginary world. Get yourself a little scary. Okay, now I'm going to move through my notes. Here's my plan. Move through the notes. Do some bolero. Maybe continue some bolero afterwards, and then finish my note. All these. I'll come to the end of my notes. I only have a couple more pages. And I'm going to do a little bit of the Vivaldi E minor, I think, and talk and play for that. And then we'll have questions, free for all, stoning or whatever, and then I'll take off. So at the break, I have to run down and get my suitcase, and I'm ready to roll down the hill right afterwards too. So anyway, let me finish with my notes. I did this, this is, boy, what a coincidence. I got right to the long tone thing, and what Mike, just to give real briefly, because I'm not gonna get into details, because this will really put everybody to sleep, but, and it's something I'll put in my notes too. It's something that Hertzberg students were hammered with, Mr. Hertzberg's idea of long tones. And his idea was the way you get the note, you're gonna do the long tones on that day. You get it from having done scales and intervals, or whatever other stuff you've done, and found a note that you don't like for some reason or another. You feel like you can't control it dynamically, you can't attack it, you don't feel it steady or anything, and that is your candidate, for long tones that day. And so what he does first is, and I'll put this in my notes too, but if people are taking notes, it's really quite simple. You put you need a metronome and a tuner, and you stick your metronome on 60, and what you do first is try to attack every other note with, so you will go bom, bom, gum, and this is I always refer to this as the fundamental technical thing you're supposed to do. Play, because if you could, one way to define technique is playing the note you want when you want it to play. Because if you could, again, back to the Pavarotti note, if you could deliver a B natural that sounded like Pavarotti, but you needed several seconds of preparation, you don't have good technique, because someone can't say, bomb, and you play the note. So what this fundamental technique is playing the note you want to play exactly when it's required. So that's why, if you think of it that way, it gives some sense to sitting there like a moron playing every other beat of a metronome. So you watch, as you're doing this too, you watch, now what's the pitch gonna be of this note that I just tongue out of the blue, and have recovery time of a beat in between. So bomb, bomb, so you can mess with this at home. Step 2 is you do legato tonguing on continuously on 60 again. So it's da, 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 da. And legato tonguing can mean anything you want that day. It can mean several things. It can mean breath attack. It can mean extremely light tonguing. It can mean anything between breath attack and ta. Anything that lets you do a continuous note, and you're again watching the tuner to see whether you're jumping up or down or something with each attack, and whether you're able to maintain the pitch at that level. Okay, so those are the 2 preparatory things, and now you mix the dynamics in with this thing. So step 3 is you play half notes with half note rests in between them, alternately pianissimo and fortissimo, and this is where the rubber meets the road. And that is, with a tuner, you're going to judge whether you're actually playing the same note on the forte and the pianissimo thing. So you alternate those 2. And I find this was, if you can do this religiously, even these first 3 steps, you've come along. It does has amazing effects on your relationship with your bassoon, especially if you make sure you just don't do it on an easy note every day. Fall back into that every once in a while, but try to do a bad note. Unless you're really discouraged, and you can use something more euphonious. And then step 4, I got one more step of this, and that is step 4 is is the real long tone, and the way Mr. Hertzberg had to start off was let's say 4 beats, let's say 4 whole notes connected with each other, and all slurred together. You start pianissimo with the attack you had on the first note, with the pianissimo you'd established with alternate half notes, and then you hold 4 beats of pianissimo, crescendo 4 beats to fortissimo, decrescendo 4 beats from that, and then hold it out, then the other 4 beats pianissimo. So this is the long tone proper, and then to make it, to refine your long tone and refine your idea of crescendo and decrescendo, add another beat to each one of those or each one of those whole notes, and then add 2 beats if you can. So you get up, so maybe you have 7 beats in each, you hold the note for 7 beats, crescendo for 7 beats, decrescendo for 7 beats, and hold it for 7 beats, and see what how gradual your crescendo has to get. Because if you have a fixed, as we showed this morning, if you have a fixed pianissimo and a fixed fortissimo, the longer you stretch it out, the more subtle that crescendo is going to have to be. and you're fooling around this morning with trying to establish 5 different dynamic levels, can help you examine how you're doing on that. You know, and another good thing to tape would be to say, boy, I'm going to tape myself playing, 5 different dynamic levels, and then see if I can get a 7-beat crescendo going where I really think the note is getting louder at every instant, and it's not going at the end to get to achieve it. So anyway, aren't you glad I didn't write all this out, because it could be really boring, but it's essential.
Do they make a meter for decibel levels?
Oh, that would be nice. That would be.
It would help.
That's a great idea.
They are,
Boy, you are nasty.
they're available on Radio Shack, that's where Cooper got his,
Radio Shack?
Radio Shack.
Okay.
That's a very nasty idea. Boy, oh boy, that's wonderful.
When you do the half note one with the half note and half note, do you take a breath before each note and do breath?
Yeah, whatever. I don't think about it. I mean, I just make sure that I can play it. I mean, whatever you have to do, get a cup of coffee, come back. I mean, whatever you can do that half note rest, I think is okay. Yeah, that's a good question. And you can look at each of the attack. What kind of attack am I going to do to each one? Be sure to check the intonation. I tend to have a tongue sometimes that I tend to maybe attack it, and it goes sharp a little bit. I just have to be careful about that. And so I use that as a way to rope myself in on that too. So, to know whether I'm getting, to correct my, what people call support, whatever that is really, get it going so that I'm attacking it on pitch. Anyway, so I think that's probably enough on long tones, and then that leads into the articulation thing. I think that, again, an advertisement for listening to other instruments, listening to what vocalists do, listening to different articulations string players make, and try to, duplicate those in your own playing. At least realize there's more of a palette than what we learned in band, with tongue or slurred, and we should keep after each other on that. Lots of times in orchestra too, it's very, very nice to be able to kind of sneak in. I don't know, I call it the clarinet attack. Clarinets always seem to go, they can always show you up on that. But on so many chords, especially if you have a half hole or a flick key or something where you can attack the note pretty easily, and your pitch can be much better if you can kind of just sneak in on the note and not use a ta, and you can fit in with a wind choir much better than calling attention to yourself, saying, "Here I am, ta." That you can really identify. There was what was this in the IDRS or was this in Scientific American? I can't remember, but it was somebody did something about, you probably had that experience if you're listening to an orchestra and all of a sudden you hear a sustained note and you don't know what instrument it is. You say, is that an oboe? Is it a bassoon? Is it a trumpet? Is it a viola? You don't even know what it is, but but once you hear it attacked, you know instantly what it is. And apparently there's so much information in the attack, the characteristic wave of that you can identify the instrument much better than you can except by scientific instruments that identify the sustained notes. So if you can not be identified on the attack, in other words, sneak in, they can't bring you up on charges. They have to Mirandize you before they know it was you that was out of tune. You have to, if that still exists in a few years. I don't know if they'll get rid of Miranda or what. But so it has to. I think thinking articulation is good for practical reasons like that, like keeping your job. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say on the singers. Listen to singers for articulation, and don't be so. As wind players, I think I mentioned this before, we're really hung up on tonguing sometimes. I mean, I was one of my clarinet colleagues was telling me that he had talked once with Gervais de Payer, who was a British clarinet player, who is a fabulous technician, and he said he didn't make very many decisions beforehand at all about things that he would tongue or slur in fast passages, because he said it really didn't. It was just whatever felt like was going to flow. I mean, I guarantee you that if you play the Weber concerto and you slur most things, that people will enjoy it, maybe even more, except for bassoon players. Like, oh, he didn't even tongue that. But if you play it in a musical way and you put in slurs that sound natural and tongue when you can, it'll be a much more pleasant experience for the listener. And so I think, you know, I think we overrate, you know, machine gun tonguing that we have to do sometimes, even though I admire it as much as everybody else, you know. But anyway, that's all I have to say on articulation. Anybody have anything else to say on articulation? Because next is the biggest secret. If you don't know this fingering, the biggest secret, the one I was telling you that saves my life every week, is middle F sharp. You know, I think it's pretty dramatic. How's this go? It's been so long. It's this one. Oh, here. No, the regular middle F sharp. This is the new fingering. Really useful at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet, Tchaikovsky, Romeo and Juliet, and many other, almost every piece you ever play that requires a soft F sharp. And the way you do it, use the wrong F sharp key. In other words, use your thumb F sharp key, which you know, but most people will use the little finger on the middle F sharp. And most of the students have a slight intonation difference. I'll get back to that footnote. But anyway, use the back F sharp key, either a giant half hole or no first finger, and your low D key and D sharp key. Give that a try, see if that works for you. I think you can even do it with a breath attack if you need to. Sorry, let me give it once more. It's 0 or half, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, the F key, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the back F sharp, the right thumb F sharp key, and then low D key and low D sharp key. So that should do it. Everybody try it with a breath attack, see if that works. Have many people use that? How many people know that finger already? Yeah, see, I know those guys, but they're smart. Anybody over here ever use that finger? Good. But to me, don't you agree that's a lifesaver finger? It's like drive-by F sharp, you know, it's a drive-by F sharp. No one will know it was you, especially if you use a breath attack. What was that? Must have been a trumpet player. Yeah, I think it was a trumpet player. And then everybody, just to make sure we have a complete view of F sharps, everybody knows the double F sharp key, low F sharp with a pancake key, right? Use both F sharp keys and the pancake key will give you a good. Right. If your read is pretty good, you know, you usually don't need that one as much as you need. But even with the best read, that middle F sharp with one is really great. And then the third leg of the F sharp nightmare is the high F sharps. When there are probably volumes written on the high F sharp, right? I mean, there are millions of high F sharps. The basic, you know, probably if you look at the Heckle fingering, he probably has 1, 2, 3, and 1. That's probably, you know, you never know. I mean, they haven't updated that since 1820, the fingering chart. But you know, sort of the basic in trill fingerings and everything. I mean, you can look in the Cooper book, but this is kind of and he has lots of good suggestions for the high F sharp. And these guys, I'm going to ask people to throw in their F sharp. So let's just make a list of how you play F sharp. You can play it 1, 2, 3, and the first finger, like this, right? And that's a. But what am I doing wrong? Yeah, it's not second. Okay, need a half hold, right?
Yeah.
Need a half hold. So that'll know that. So how often I use that one. But that's you know, in some passages, some trills that might work. You have the B flat F sharp, which you can do. You can play it with with 1, 2, 3 with a half hole in the B flat, I think. You can play it with the middle finger, and the B flat key. You can play it with or without this. Okay, so you have all those variations. I'm trying to have good and bad F sharps, but leading the F sharp that I use is a slightly bizarre one. I half hole the second hole. So, and a lot of people, some people use this. It's a sharp one, but I manage to wrestle it to the ground most days. So second, half hole second, third finger, D, resonance key, D sharp, 1, 2, and 4. A very bizarre thing. There are two bizarre ways you can modify this one. Bizarre fingering number 1 for me is add the half hole of the first finger. And so you have half hole 1, half hole 2. How many double half hole fingers do you know? So it's easy to overshoot it, but you can make it as low as you want by that. If you can keep this one, solder this finger in place, and then and so this is the articulation fingering, and this is the pitch finger. So articulation and pitch. So you have to be kind of triple jointed to make that work. So you half hold this one and half hold this one.
And then this hand is.
Oh, and this hand is 1, 2, and 4. So
Wow, that's great.
so you can mess with that. I dare you to try it out. That's a dangerous one. You can go with that curve going down the mountain with that one. The other thing you can do is to these F sharp fingers, you can add the pancake key, right? Is that what you guys have you done that before too? Yeah, add pancake key to it. What else do you guys come up with? Michael, what else do you do?
Basically, middle finger, 1, 2, 4, middle finger, 1, 2, B flat, the half hole 2, 3, whisper key, E flat key, 1, 2, B flat, or 1, 2. But essentially,
So
you can
whisper
either
key,
1,
you
2,
think
1,
whisper
2,
keys
1, 2,
are-
4, or 1, 2, B flat in the right hand, and mix and match with whatever left hand you want to play.
Good. Is that, do you agree on that, Darrell?
I adopt a scale F sharp which has the half hole,
Oh,
arpeggio F sharp which is middle finger, without the whisper key for the thumb, and like G major arpeggios.
oh yeah, good. That's great. That's a great idea.
And you might want to speak to the first G flat in Beethoven 4 in the first movement.
Oh yeah, because there's people use a right hand version of it, right? And that is, I don't even know that one. What I do is I just make sure that I use the full one and then just kind of come in on a breath attack on that first G flat. I use the half hole 2, 3, 1, 2, 4 on that. But there's a right hand only. That's what Lauren was talking
Yeah,
about.
just with the ring finger only. Just the G key in the right hand. You might want to add the resonance key in the left hand, but that's it.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Middle finger on the right hand. Yeah, it's almost there. Oh, that's pretty good. So lots of things. It's an unexplored, not totally explored territory. See, some of us have looked as far as New Zealand and we haven't found any more F sharps. He's looked down there and he hasn't found any more. The ancient Maoris, though, they probably found some. They probably have F sharp. Yes.
Do you ever use your fingering without your third left-hand finger?
Sometimes I have. Yeah, I have. But in some fast passage or something like that.
Sure.
But that's anyway. Those are your. Just be really careful of that note and realize that it's a different note in G major than it is in F sharp major, and pay attention to it and talk yourself in and out of different pitches of that and different timbres. I mean, it's back to that how the F sharp sounds so bright to our ears. It complicates things. So calm yourself down about that. You're never going to get it totally under wraps probably, and it's always going to stick out. There's always going to be a little shine to it no matter how you try to disguise it, I think. But, it's going to be in there. And if you take all the shine out, it probably is so incredibly dull that, no one would recognize it as a note anymore. So anyway, that's it. Any more F sharp questions or additions or things I missed? Boy, what? There's one. I thought there was one more F sharp thing. we could talk about. But can't the middle F sharp be done with just fingering, it's basically fingering F with, I mean, what am I thinking of? Is that right? It's like fingering a low F and then using a half hole, that will just about give you sort of a lowish.
You can do just 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3,
3,
3,
1, 2, 3,
1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll give you, that's, okay, that's
Oh.
what I'm thinking of, yeah. So that's another middle. So anyway, something to fool around with. And how many people get a chance to, how many people have the Cooper book that with all the different fingerings? I mean, it can be discouraging to look into, where do I start? But what I found is really useful, if you find a note you're having trouble with, look and read everything he has on that note, and write in the book what your comments are, what works for you, what doesn't seem to be right, and if there's one you discover, or make a note right on that page, and you'll be so glad you did. I mean, I was telling Lauren last night, the joys of teaching, that once, it was a really good student, one of my best students ever, that came to me from Eastman for graduate studies at the University of Minnesota, Lori Hatcher Mers. And she was playing a Mildy concert study for me, and she got to this point where there was this trill that I was always mystified by, figure it out, everything, and she played the trill. I even forget what trill it was, and I stopped and said, Lori, how did you do that trill? That was great. I've got to know how you did it, because that was the best I've ever heard that trill. She said, well, I figured out that if I do this and this. I said, wait a minute, I wrote it in my little Heckle hand book that's all falling apart, I have it in a plastic bag, carefully, preserved. And then, it couldn't have been more than 3 weeks later, she came back playing another piece, and she said, before I play this, I've got to ask you, how do you do this trill here? And I said, that rings a bell. I was totally naive about it. I mean, totally innocent. I said, see, it rings a bell that I've learned a trill for that note in the not too distant past. So I got out my book, and I looked at it, she said, that's my trill! And I said, that's the way teaching works. See, you tell me things, and then you pay me, and I tell back to you. It was crazy. Ever since then, I think, it's really impressive. I mean, I learned something, write it down, because you will forget, if you get that good fingering for students get tap, write it down on your copy of it. Or write it in the book and say, or write it in the Cooper book, get the hardbound version and write it in there, because it'll be there for you and your posterity, for all your descendants that I'm sure are all bassoon players. But it's just wonderful to have that stuff on record. Okay, moving on. Okay, we hit F sharp to death. One thing that I wish I had learned early on was the mute that works best for me is just a piece of foam. Packing foam, especially black looks best because we can't tell from the audience, or red if you're a red affiliate, but this works great for me. So so it's the cheapest kind of mute. I've tried those little cloth mutes; they're pretty good, but I find this is pretty nice. It's just that kind of soft foam that I think this is out of a vocal case. I just cut a slice out of a vocal case and put it in there. Okay, that was the whole point. That was pretty fast. That's the fastest point. That was point 19. Okay. Now, and my next point, point 19, I touched on a little bit before, and that's vocals. I think that again, Norman Hertzberg did a good. I think he did an article in the Ullery Journal a few years ago about vocal testing, because we all reach that stage like we've. You've gone to a place that has a lot of vocals, like Nielsen's in Chicago. I don't know how many people have been there. Mrs. Nielsen, who still runs the business, she only is in there a couple days a week, but she gets a huge Christmas present every year from Heckle, because she keeps several hundred vocals in stock all the time from Heckle and mails them out to people for testing. And she's wonderful, except she, over the years, she thinks she's kind of become an expert on vocals. Well, what kind of bassoon do you play? Well, you need such. I say, well, thanks, Mrs. Nielsen, but I'll try these. And then, do you have any CC2s? I could try two, just on the off chance. But I might like one of those two instead of a BVD4, or something like that. And so so Mr. Hertzberg was saying, well, you get to a place and you have all these vocals to try. You're trying a vocal against your vocal. what's the most efficient way that you're not, fooled by something you're attracted to, a few little notes, or boy, this one plays the Rite of Spring great, or listen to the high E on this one, or listen how it does the Mozart concerto. His idea was, okay, put on the brakes here, put out the vocals here, let's say you have 10 vocals. Play, just, put one vocal on, play a slow B flat arpeggio from the bottom, slur it all the way to the top, B flat or D, wherever you want to go, and then go down again. Put the vocal down, take the next vocal, put that on, and you will see what variation there is, especially in resistance and sort of weakness in that part of the vocal on your, you say, well, it's your reed and everything too, but try to pick a reed that's similar to what you're playing. And it's amazing how many you can sort out and eliminate right away. You may get down to maybe 2 or 3 vocals at most out of those 10. Then you can, maybe do the thing again, and then start, blowing and maybe do another kind of arpeggio, but you can eliminate so many things that way. I don't think it's really good to start right off and play the Mozart Bassoon Concerto and say, oh, that's pretty good, I mean, those might be the only grooves that the vocal works in, But to get it, really fill the vocal up over the length of the instrument really is an amazing test. And I didn't quite believe it until I, did it a couple times, and I got good vocals that way, I think, and avoided some bad ones. And on that note too, with my whole thing, I talked about wrapping my vocal in solder before. It was kind of interesting. It got me, I was really thinking about that thin walled vocal, and I don't think there's one answer to what vocals work best for people. I mean, some people use very bizarre vocals that nobody else can play, and they sound fabulous. So there's no one size fits all on vocals. It's just approach it in a rational way and make sure that it's a vocal that will work over the whole range for you. High note vocals are another matter, a whole separate category that I don't really know much about. But this the light singer vocals is supposed to be great for that. And I think Bob Williams was. I mean, some people have vocals. Don't they have vocals with a hole drilled in them for high F or something? So there's always that. There are always bag of tricks things people have, but that I can't really talk to that much. But there are plenty of acrobats in the sin world that you can learn that sort of stuff from. My friend Ryohei Nakagawa could play Rite of Spring up an octave because he had figured out all these fingerings, up to high. And then it was amazing. He could do it. He could do it on his regular vocal too. And he said, it was astounding. But so there are undiscovered territories in the bassoon, and our current vocals may not be able to handle them. They may disintegrate. Well, this is getting pretty good. Oh yeah, and it's good. The one thing you might look into that I can't speak to accurately, but I think that the numbers on the vocals are different. Doesn't Fox have higher numbers for lower vocals, or isn't there 2 more like a 1, echo 1 as far as length goes? But that's something that you should learn if you're going to buy vocals. Ask your friends and bring a tuner and see what that one does, and get educated. Don't be bullied into shopping for a particular kind of vocal. No matter who the person is. If you're going to spend several $100s for a vocal, you're the customer. Remember that, and make them educate you on the vocals. Okay, so that's all the vocals. And I already touched some on just kind of my attitude towards fingerings. A new fingering has to fit in or you have to work on fitting it into the notes around it. The best fingering you have has to fit in, has to do the job in that context. If it's really fast, it goes by really fast, it's usually okay, but even that, you can feel that bump in the road as you go by some fingering that's a little false. So, be always on the lookout for that, and always write them down. Jeez, I wish I had written down all the fingerings. I mean, sometimes I'll get to a piece, I say, I've got to rediscover this fingering. I've got to rediscover the fingering I know worked for me here. And I should, you have to write down stuff like when I find out that, high B flat you can bring down by using the pancake key. I have to rediscover that. Sometimes when I play some contemporary piece and I have to go like this, I say, okay, put down the pancake key and you've got it. I have to rediscover that each time. If I wrote it down, I wouldn't have to rediscover it every time. So, save yourself some work. You may think have a good memory right now and be so alive, but you will forget. You will forget any good fingering you learn. I'm gonna start on my last page here.
One more question.
Yes.
about Vocal testing.
Yes.
After you get past the primary eliminations with
Yes.
your B flat arpeggio, do you have test notes that are bad notes on your bassoon that you try with the vocal to see if the vocal improves any of those?
I do. I try to play all, especially middle range. I try to play, all the scales right in there to see where they go, and if any timbres stick out to me, really, really weird. And I don't know. I don't have any specifically bad notes I use, but I certainly will try C sharps and F sharps and the low range for sure, because I'm always afraid what I'm going to get into down there. Usually I don't feel too bad about the upper range, because most vocals will be pretty good, unless you get to an extreme, high E's and stuff. But other than that, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what people's ideas are, and success they've had with vocal purchases, because it is a major investment every time. And oh yeah, the other thing on vocals is another axiom. I think is if you find a vocal that's better, you like better than yours, buy it. Because then you will, it's worth buying, because you can if your vocal is pretty good, you could probably sell it if you don't want to have to own that many vocals after you accumulate, 11 or 12 or something. But I always kid John Miller, because he said, "Is this book collection all these little velvet drawers?" I say, "Well, John, I only play on one vocal at a time. I don't know if I do." So I always tease John Miller. He's a fun guy. We're like junior high school kids when we start to talk. I give him a bad time. I have one more John Miller story that I will tell later, but exactly, because it's down to my next item, and that's repertoire. And I think it's great that we have lots of arrangers and things among the bassoon players, because as much outside this room we don't say this, but our repertoire is pretty. If you look at violin or cello or piano, we go, oh my God, if we had one Brahms sonata, of our own, or the Beethoven bassoon concerto, we'd be set, But as it is, we have most of our great repertoire is orchestral repertoire, I think, and we have a few great chamber music pieces, and a whole bunch of pretty good ones, and then we have a whole lot of bassoon music, kind of, and I think it's not that I don't enjoy the music and I don't enjoy playing, but it's frustrating sometimes, that's why we do all these arrangements and we try to go into the other instruments repertoire. So I urge everybody to try to do that, to go into vocal music, to go into violin, cello music, and piano arrangements, the whole thing, because we get a little inbred with what is really good. I remember, again, this is my John Miller story. I sort of felt bad, but I was teasing him. When he was playing that new Rossini piece, that was newly discovered Rossini piece for bassoon and strings, I think it is. I don't know how many people heard about this. Do you know the piece? Yeah, it's a virtuosic. It's kind of a nice bon piece, And I went, John did it with Minnesota Orchestra. I went, and of course I heard it, and he did a fabulous job on his Fox bassoon, gold keys and everything, and just impeccable. I said, John, just beautiful playing, musical, everything. So I said, but I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of the piece. It's not, it's not a great piece. And he said, well, I think it's one of the top half dozen pieces for bassoon and orchestra. And I said, well, that may be right. I was kidding him, of course, because I think we have some great concertos, but it just shows, that I think that we have to, urge composers to write pieces for us all the time, to do, in the meantime, do lots of arrangements, but try to develop relationships with composers, young composers, older composers, tell them what you'd like to see. My particular thing, I'm always urging composers, and I've got quite a few pieces this way, saying, there's a big gap. We really need more pieces for bassoon and like string trio or bassoon and string quartet or string quintet, because it's such a wonderful medium for bassoon, and it shows off the bassoon really well. We don't have to compete with other wind players, and we can learn how to play in tune, that kind of thing. And so I've got talk people into that. I said I don't want just a funny, entertaining piece. but I want, you know, a really piece. And a lot of people will respond to that. They say, well, okay, and I give them, you know, recordings of stuff of the, you know, from 1800, you know, Stamitz and Gebauer and Krummer and that stuff. And said, you can do better than this, but that's what I'm talking about. You know, it's very euphonious sounding, but maybe you can come up with some better ideas, you know, some more 20th or 21st century sounding stuff. So I try to do, I mean, as a favor to all of us, if you have composer friends, say, let's, you know, don't encourage them to write just funny stuff for bassoon, you know, or odd stuff. Encourage them to write, you know, good pieces. I mean, to have that gift from Andre Previn of that wonderful bassoon sonata, I think, is just an example of how what wonderful pieces there are that are written. And many of these guys that teach more than I do can come up with many more sonatas that are just wonderful 20th century, late 20th century sonatas that are still being written. Can you guys give me a couple names of great contemporary sonatas that you like?
Well, Steinmetz is one of them.
Steinmetz that's recorded here, yeah. And how about another one?
Hurlstone.
Hurlstone, good. And how about another serious bassoon sonata or piece? How many? Edler? Yeah, okay, that's going back a little ways. That's going back 50 years or something too, right?
Wasn't that shame?
I mean, my friend Michael Doherty's written stuff for bassoon, but I mean, it's, you know, it's more theater pieces, but, you know, it treats the bassoon seriously at least, you know.
Oh, John Williams.
John Williams.
John Williams, of course, even though I wish he'd written more of a Star Wars.
Yes, sir.
But, Darryl,
Matthew Lucier is writing a lot of their music.
okay, good.
Eric E. wasn't.
Yeah, good idea, yeah.
The David Mazlanka.
Oh, yeah, Muslanka, yeah. So this is all encouraging, so I think we should, you know, encourage each other to perform and look and seek out these pieces and, you know, and go to each other's recitals and really hear them, so. Anyway, and I love stuff with strings. I mean, I don't want to feel totally tied to piano, you know, because I'd love to get stuff where the other people are more, where we have more instrumentalists too, so. Anyway, I'm looking for those pieces.
Have you heard the Daniel Poor Quintet for bassoon and strings?
I heard about that. I heard that's wonderful. Have you played it?
I've not played it, I was at the world premiere, it's quite nice.
Wow. That's great. I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to say, because I don't want to get into trills and everything, but I want to say one rule about trills. We're getting kind of dry here, but I want to make sure we have time to have a little bit of break and then play some more and have questions. My only thing about wisdom on trills is to reinforce what Lauren said, that when you find a trill, make sure that the trill is in tune. And if it's not in tune, at least make sure the top note is in tune. Because I think that's crucial, because I think that's what the ear hears over the top. If the bottom note is not quite there, it's not as important as the top note, to my ear anyway. And in the flick key register, I would make sure that if you're using flick keys, use the flick key of the top note. In other words, if you're trilling C D, use the D flick key. If you're trilling A B flat, use the have the C key down, that kind of thing. So you're always so you're giving deference to the upper note each time. You're focusing on how that note comes out and responds and plays in tune. So that's my wisdom on trills. Write down fingerings. I did repertoire. And we already really talked about tuners and tuning before, but I really, I think tuners can be too much of a crutch, especially when you're trying to play in tune, play thirds correctly, or adjust or match somebody in an orchestra. You can't say, well, I'm in tune here, and the rest of the world is out of tune. It's like the joke about I would say clarinet player, because that seems to be more appropriate. But the guy that a woman is listening to the radio at home, listening to the traffic report, and said, on Highway 280, there's a guy going the wrong way and on the wrong side of the road, and it's really snarling up traffic. And she knows that's the way her husband usually goes to work. So she calls him up and she said, honey, be careful on 280. She says, there's somebody going the wrong way on 280, so be careful. He says, One person says there are hundreds of them. So, you know, I have a friend that I think of when I tell the joke. You know, the person that says, well, I'm in too, and then everybody else says it, you know. But I think it's, you know, really, you have to really be careful how you use tuners. But I tell you, I depend on, when I'm doing, Daryl was asking about the beginning of Beethoven Fourth, but when I play that piece, my tuner is out at the beginning. Because as long as the B flat is there, I'm going to make sure that my entrance on the G flat is going to be within range. That I'm not going to depend just on, you know, the thing, because they go, you know, C, E, F, G flat, so I'm going to make sure that's high enough and that the E is low enough, that I go low on the E natural and then back, boring back to the F. So, but I make sure that first G flat entrance. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? The opening. You play this 2D B flat, and then the strings, and you go, oh my God, I've got to play a G flat out of the middle of nowhere. And you have 3 beats to get your composure back, and then you can, you know, zero in on it with a tuner. To me, that helps. It gives me. Then I put it away, but then I take it out just to make sure when I join on my F natural in the second movement, going to the is that what I go to a G flat, right? It's G flat, D flat. Is that what it's not? F sharp, C sharp. Boom, 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 boom. Then I join to that F natural, and I know from what we've talked about here, the F can be a little low because it's leading tone, but I want to make sure the G flat is in tune again. So I have that tuner out there, and I stick it. If there's a page turn there, and at the end of the first movement, I turn my tuner on, cover it over that page, and that's when I turn to do that after 4 measures rest, I know where to come in on my F natural. So I use it as a crutch that way, I have to admit. So if I have an isolated note, and the one time I played Rite of Spring, since I played the chamber orchestra, I've only got to play Rite of Spring first bassoon once at a summer festival, but I was determined that I was not going to lead the orchestra down the wrong path. So I had my tuner there for the C, so I could sneak in on that C and get it perfect. So the tuner can be good that way, but just don't insist that you're the only person in tune because it's straight up for you. So that's my wisdom on that, and also to realize that you're using different intonation generally when you're playing with piano than you're playing with strings, because things aren't getting bent as much. So don't get frustrated when you're playing with piano a lot and then go to play with strings, say, what's with these string players? You know, I can't, you know, they've got this weird intonation system. Well, try to get in their world and you'll benefit a lot by it. Almost to the, I have 3 more items that are they're crucial. Everybody wants to know about high E fingerings. I think I have a pretty good high E fingering. I mean, we can talk about that for a second. Oh, one thing, this was an added thing to my list, is how many people have seen this thing? It's made by, it's one of the clarinet makers. Van Doren, is that, you guys know that? Does Justin have these? It's a little, yeah, it's Van Doren. It's a little glass rod that's been roughed up here, very finely. You guys can pass it around. And it's meant for finishing reeds. I'm not sure how effective it is, but I've used it sometimes to smooth things up. It's kind of cool.
They make flat ones like they have in the nail salons.
Oh, do they?
Just for
That's not saying. It's kind of an interesting new product that a friend of mine with a music business asked to me. And he wanted to know if it was worth having in stock. I'm not sure. And you can stick it in water and it rinses right off too. It's kind of cool, but you guys can mess with that. But anyway, the high E fingering that I like is this one. I have to grip it. I was actually about to see him tell the fingering on this one. I don't know how many. I forget how many fingers I have. On the right hand, it's a real stretch. Use this key, which I think people call this. Is this a C sharp trill or something?
Yeah.
What do you call that? C sharp trill. The G key, the little finger F sharp key. Okay, that's your right hand. It's a real stretch, so don't hurt yourself on that if your hands are small. And then on the left, the other hand, your other right hand, the left hand. In the army, they used to say, no, your other left foot. And on this one, you use the high D key in back, and in front, it's the high E key, wherever that is for you, upper, above or below the first hole. Half hole 2, 3, and the resonance key. It's clear as easy from the C sharp. Does that work for anybody? The half hole is the lowest W. Does anybody need that fingering again? Yeah? Fingering still works, which is finger a G, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, with a half hole and the C sharp key, I think.
Yes.
That'll do it. That's pretty nice. So you don't need a high key, just the C sharp key on your thumb. Thumb C sharp. So look at half hole. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe you don't. I guess I got down to the C sharp. I guess it's possible.
Yeah.
I'll just flick down to the half hole one.
Oh, yeah,
I went to the half hole. What's this? Well, I should talk about my E flat finger. Let's talk about that for a second.
It's similar to the
For my E flat,
it's just like
I use again half hole 2, E flat key, 3, resonance key, and on the right hand only the G sharp key. So you can use this. The way my keys are, I use this on the E flat, and then this for E. I'll write these things down too, but to make things complete up there, to give a certain symmetry up there, your high D, you could also you could do it in a naked way too, like. Just the D key and the third finger and the resonance key will give you that. So you could go. If you had some kind of keys where you just But slightly more complicated and also hand abusive is that on the bottom I use G, F, and the back G sharp key, right? And then on the front I use half hole 2, 3, resonance key, and D key. I can do that without a tongue too, which is nice. Because of that nice half hole. So you can, so from there, it's a little complicated down there, but not too bad. You guys all write these ones down, so. I have two more points, and then we're at the end of my laundry list, and we can play some more, and we can do questions. I can play Vivaldi. We can do all this stuff. The first thing is sort of an aid to creativity when you practice, is to develop a list. I did this once. It was kind of helpful. I've lost what I wrote down, but I started writing a list of words to think about as I practiced. Like I wrote down open, and then I wrote down timbre. I wrote down support. I wrote down all these notes I thought of. I wrote down dark, like so I can look at these notes and say, how does that? What can I be thinking about when I do this thing? Instead of thinking about getting yourself in one little dead end while you're practicing, give yourself, since you're getting into kind of a non-verbal area as you're practicing, maybe you can find a word that would really work for you that day as you're thinking about what support. I like a list of. I can forget how I got into this, but I had like a whole page, double column of words that I was thinking about as I practiced. Instead of an idle thing to do. I mean, you may want to do it with works of art or something. Maybe you want to take Sister Wendy's Introduction to Western Art or something, and look at paintings, and think about things that way. I mean, people. I heard even Itzhak Perlman watches TV while he practices his scales. So, it's where your mind needs to be while you do that. So that you are doing these, verbal or non-verbal operations while you practice, and all sorts of things. I mean, be inventive about how you use your brain and attacking music and finding it. So anyway, I wish you all luck on that. And then my last thing is very mundane, just talking about trying to be more more aware of how you use half holes. I mean, half holes are sometimes they pop up in unexpected places, like that high F sharp fingering I was showing you guys, that sometimes you can do a half hole on both, one articulation half hole, the other the tuning half hole. Well, that can apply lots of times, and the basic half hole thing where we all run into it as kids when we first learn the bassoon is the three deadly notes, F sharp, G, and G sharp in the middle. And I think it's true. I mean, I have to refresh myself sometimes, remind myself that the half hole gets smaller as you go up on those three notes. And sometimes if you have a problem with intonation or articulation, it can be traced back to that. Say, well, I've kind of fallen off the wagon on how I think of a half hole as kind of a generic thing, and it's actually a very precise thing up there. And I don't think there's anything wrong, as I've said before, about you, instead of using flick keys in a particular situation, if it works for you and you can control the pitch and articulation better, don't hesitate to use half holes on A, B flat, B, C, because it can really, really help you in certain situations. It sure does to me, especially that kind of breath attack thing where you want to have your drive-by note, where you don't want them to be able to identify what instrument it is. I mean, certainly at the beginning of one thing I try sometimes at the beginning of Beethoven 4, that sustained B flat, I'll be darned if I'm going to come in on that with a, let them know the bassoon's there. I want to either use the flick key and use the breath attack, or use a half hole and do the breath attack, or use some other bizarre thing. There's some bizarre things you can do with that first B flat too. You can hold down. Well, what can you do? There's something you can do on that one. You can hold down your D key and your A key and the resonance key, and I think some combination in there can give kind of a bizarro B flat that will be kind of muted and pretty much in tune. But there are all sorts of things you can discover on your instrument you can do that half holes might that might help you on. And so, you know, with that, I think I've exhausted everything I know about the bassoon. You know, that's why I tell people, like, 2 lessons, you can learn everything. Don't bother taking a 3rd lesson. So questions at this point?
Where would you use the, your sponge mute? Your,
Boy, that's a good question. I might use it, I'm trying to think where I used it most recently. I can't remember right now, but I've used it quite a bit. Now, a lot of times in contemporary music, but I have used it in ordinary repertoire too. I kind of think where I've used it recently. But it can be something you use even, especially if you don't have a reed that you think is mellow enough, I think. You have a reed, have a varied program where on one piece you have to go racka, 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 and the other piece you have to go like this.
so now, like, if you wanted to do that on the Tchaikovsky with the little note that you come in on, with the mute in that bell, it'll throw off the pitch, right?
It might, but it's not too bad. I don't think that you're in too bad of a shape. Let's just see what it would do on that one. If I had, I did, but tell me where, if somebody has a tuner, tell me where the E is. Is that about where it's supposed to be, or is that? I could use the little B flat on too, right? Sharp?
Yeah.
Very little, pretty sharp. So you're gonna put me on the spot. I'm gonna pick up a dry reed with that low E, right? Now let's do that, compare it with that out, see how much sharper it made. Flatter? Or short?
So it was the same as the last one.
Oh, it was the same? Okay, well, so maybe it didn't. So if I could play it in tune, I would be in tune with or without problem. So,
Maybe question?
yes.
Particular conductor I played for preferred the bassoon be used in Tchaikovsky 6 where the bass clarinet goes, like that. And I got one of those from Bob and a bunch of trick figurings.
Yeah, that would be a good place.
It's so soft headed, you must follow that. So that's the only other place I've ever used it.
Yeah, some conductors will ask for the bassoon instead of bass clarinet. I was betrayed by a bass clarinet player at the summer festival. Ullery June from Chicago Symphony told AGO, I said, Chuck, and he got him before rehearsal. I said, no, Chuck can play that, it's no problem, he'll play that. Because he didn't want to hang around, he just to play the bass clarinet notes. So he said, oh, okay, we'll have the bassoon play. I said, thanks, Ullery, thanks a lot. Well, I had something to do tonight, I didn't want to stay. So, and then the clarinet gets so soft that it paints you into a corner, so you have to broaden the clarinet, a little louder coming down into your descending arpeggio. Any other questions? Yes?
Charles, do you have any muted fingerings for an entrance of low A, make it less obtrusive?
Low A, the mute might help on something like that, but can you add you can use pancakey on that a little bit, I think.
Low F sharp.
Low F sharp? Even better. That's great. Yeah. Good question. Yeah, he's got to take over the question. But it's something that every week if I have something like that, I try to write stuff down, but I'm trying to discover stuff all the time about what I use. So, and the reeds seem to vary, and different things seem to work differently. So, I'm always open to experiment. And I ask my friends too. I say, did you hear a weird sound coming out of the bassoons? And I try to test it. Because sometimes things seem really weird close up, and no one notices. No one. They say, no, you sound really nice. Then I remember I was doing some little Baroque piece, and I was using, I was putting down my low B flat key for the low D, because it was the only way I could get the picks and the timbre just right down there. And I was so self-conscious about it. And the violinist says, "Oh no, that's a great sound down there. Why you've got to use that?" So I was surprised because I thought it sounded like a wall down there. To me, it sounded like a cotton up my nose. But so sometimes it's not as bad as you think, or it's worse than you think. But it's good to get pushback from your friends and colleagues. Any other things? Anybody else before we have a little bit of a break? I'm sorry, I kept you guys a little. Yes.
On long tones, how do you motivate your students to do that and yourself?
Oh, just tell yourself you're just gonna do it for 30 seconds. And give reward to your, you know, I don't know what you do for those guys. And if you can't, I mean, I think the key to getting anything done is just to do a little bit of it. Even if you say, okay, I'm just gonna do the first part of it today. I'm just gonna go bomb, bomb, and say, and I'm gonna just try to do it until I can get that note centered, and then that's it for the day. Because I hate this, you know, and then the success may breed willingness to do it. Or just do the long tone that day, or just do like, you know, the whole note thing. But I know it's murder, but you can test, you know, you can motivate students by trying, you know, saying, do you think you could play those whole notes, but with you know, playing them as quarter note, attack each quarter note, and do that kind of stuff. Or you can do the stuff with, that we did first thing this morning with the dynamics, and say, I bet you can't play more than 3 dynamics, you know, especially if you have 2 students back to back. And say, we'll be the judge, you know, and they go, wah, wah, and say, well, you know, they're all the same to me. And I think it's, then you say, well, you could get better if you did long tones, so why don't you try that? Because we're gonna have the bassoon Olympics next month, you know, that kind of thing. People might like that. But any other questions? I'm sorry that I've talked most of the time, and you guys have been extremely patient listeners, and I hope that if any questions come up, you'll email me too, if you don't have any, that you have, or things that will occur later or something. I reserve the right to ask you questions too, so. But, let me see. What plan? Could we come back and do some bolero and then do, some of the Vivaldi? Is that okay? Maybe do some Vivaldi? Would that work for everybody? Do we take what was the real plan here?
15 minutes.
Okay, the real plan was 2:15, we were supposed to stop it a half hour ago, so let's go until, let's take a break till 3, is that okay? And then come back, does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you.